Hi there, and welcome to another success story. Today, we're going to be talking to Pim. Hi, Pim.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. And everybody who watches this knows my first question is going to be, why did you become, but we're not going to say carnivore, I think we're going to say ketovore.
Yeah, oh God. So that is sort of a long story. It started many, many years ago. I think I've been keto for about 17 years. So this started when I was studying for my master's degree in nutrition, actually. And they did not teach me this. I had one classmate. She was the only one who was overweight, and she was doing the keto diet. And the teachers were like, yeah, well, maybe you will lose weight, but it's not healthy, it's not sustainable, the old BS. And she was doing it, she was losing weight, she was feeling great, and I got curious. And I was like, wonder if I should try this. I was quite fit at the time. I was working as a personal trainer, and I was already giving people diet advice because I had taken a course in that as well. But I wanted to study nutrition because it didn't seem to work as well as it should do on paper. Like everything is fine, perfect amount of food, perfect amount of macros, and still we don't get the results that we want. So that's why I actually studied nutrition. So I decided to try it myself, and it was great. It was awesome the first time I did keto, and I lost weight. I felt good. My cravings went away. I think I was like sugar-free for several weeks, and I was like, this is the shit. And then I worked extra in a bakery one evening a week and every other weekend, and when they have like broken stuff, we're allowed to eat it. So I was like, oh, there's a broken praline, I'll just try one. And I ate it. Wasn't a problem. Like, cool, now I got it. I know the solution is keto, and I can do this. So the next week there were several pralines that were broken. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have some, and I could do one last week, so I'm gonna have several. Guess what? The cravings came back, and since then keto hasn't worked the same way for me. So I was on and off, well, mostly on keto, but with a lot of keto treats to handle those cravings, or so I thought. And then eventually, as happens for most people who do that, it's not satisfying enough. So we just fall off the wagon. We have a weekend, we just binge on normal foods and then go back on keto. So that's what I was doing for many years. So I was mostly keto and falling on and off, on and off, on and off, like so many people do. And yeah, about 5 years ago, I learned how to actually deal with my cravings, and at the same time I was like, okay, if I can do this, I'm gonna try carnivore as well. So I tried carnivore. I have never got it to work for me, and we can talk about that if you want to, but I have been much more sustainably very low carb since then. So I'll stop there, just thinking about the time, and see if you want to know anything more, you can just ask.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I was smiling because my background is as a personal trainer, and I had exactly the same epiphany that all this stuff doesn't work. It's really difficult. And since I've been coaching this way, it's really simple, and you get much more result driven success, I think, when you're looking at low carb. So 5 years of carnivore, and I will get on to the reason you're on, because I've had a few people that I've interviewed have mentioned you after the interview and said you need to get Pim on because she's great about addiction. I just want to talk about you first because I think that's interesting. So your keto thing didn't really kill the cravings, so you went carnivore, and you've done that 5 years. But I understand it didn't go as plain, as plain sailing as you would have liked. So what actually happened then?
Okay, so I didn't do carnivore because of the cravings. I did carnivore because I wanted to try. I like experimenting, and I don't think I was like, yeah, maybe vegetables aren't the best thing to do, but I'm like the opposite of the canary in the coal mine, so I can take a lot of bodily abuse before I notice anything. So that was never a motivation for me. It was more curiosity to see if I could do it, because I was like, if I can do the most boring diet on earth, then I can do anything. So it was kind of like a challenge for myself. But every time I have gone carnivore, I end up having extreme headaches that develop into migraines. And in the beginning, I don't think I had any fatigue coming with it. Nowadays, I do have fatigue coming at the same time, so I can always pick that up. So it's not really working for me. And as some of your viewers might know, my partner is Bart, this weary one. And last year in January, he was doing the 90-day carnivore challenge. I wasn't supposed to be part of it, but I was like, yep, I'll jump on with that and I'll do it as well. And it, I had more headaches that went on and off for about 6 weeks. And then the last 6 weeks of this experiment, I had daily headaches, had to sleep about 2 hours every other day, at least, sometimes 3 or 4 in the middle of the day. And I think I had 2 or 3 migraines during this time as well. And I was just like, I just kept doing it because maybe if I just push through, because everyone says that you should just push through and then it will get better. And it didn't. It took me a couple of months to feel myself after that. And I had to reintroduce carbs to actually feel good. And now I've found a rhythm that sort of works for me. And I'm using rice as medicine because I know I have different kind of headaches. So I know the headache that I get because I have been zero carb. And when I start getting that, I eat 30, 40 grams of carbs from rice, which isn't a lot, but that seems to just take it away. Then I'm fine. And I can go another week or 2. And it's cool that I found a solution, but I still want to get rid of the headaches. So, yeah.
I mean, that's not a lot of carbs. If you're having 30 grams for one day and then two weeks of no carbs at all, that is extremely low carb. So I think you qualify keto for quite easily, really.
Yeah, I eat some blueberries sometimes, and that's maybe 10, 12 grams because I eat about 100 grams of blueberries every now and then. And it seems to prolong how long I can be closer to zero carb, but I haven't been. I think I might have to eat too many blueberries to get rid of the headache, and that's why they don't really work for that purpose.
Right. So, do you have like 2 meals a day? What's your meal frequency then?
Yeah, usually I do. So this is my first meal. It's egg coffee. It's about 50 grams of butter and about 5 eggs in there, and that's kind of my breakfast. That's usually prolonged for a couple of hours while I'm drinking it, and then when I'm hungry, usually early afternoon, I have my main meal and then I'm done most of the time.
Simple as that. So what normally is your main meal?
Yesterday, I had a piece of steak, and most people who would be carnivores, they would be like, that is a snack, because I'm struggling to eat a lot of protein. That's why I put 5 eggs in there, because it's the only way that I can feel like I can get enough protein without. And several months ago, I tried to make my own lardo. So I had it with lardo yesterday, but usually I have, garlic butter or some just beef fat with the steak. It's very simple. I don't complicate it much.
And what do you have to drink? Is it, apart from the egg coffee, what do you drink?
Just water.
Just water.
I'm
See,
boring. Yeah, well,
yeah,
I drink herbal teas every now
yeah.
and then, to be fair. Yeah.
It's pretty clean, I think. That's good. So do you work out still? Because you used to be a personal trainer.
I do a little bit, but I've gotten lazy. I've never been one to work out at home, so I think that's kind of the switch that I need to turn in my head. I have my kettlebells here, so I do a little bit on most days, but we're talking like 10, 15 minutes, and I used to do several hours. If it doesn't feel like I'm doing a lot. And to go to a gym, I need to drive 45 minutes. I'm like, nah, no way I'm doing that. I don't have time for that. So the only thing I'm doing, I'm walking maybe an hour per day, and I'm playing around with my kettlebells a little bit ambitiously.
Yeah. Now you said it's a boring, most boring diet. Do you still feel that?
On and off, I think. So sometimes I don't know. I mean, it can be the same cut of meat, because we buy, sometimes I buy like a huge rump steak that is like 7 kilos, so about 15 pounds. And I just cut it up. I can eat it. sometimes I think is super juicy and flavorful and all is good. And then the next day, I'm like, this is extremely boring. It's like something is wrong with the meat. And I don't know, it's maybe my body's way of telling me that you should be eating something else. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have an egg day or eat a lot of scrambled eggs and maybe some ham or something else. So then I feel like this is boring and I need more flavor. But I don't know what's deciding that. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not.
Well, I'm always very aware of what comments I will get, and one of the comments might be, I would assume, so why do you do it? What are the positives?
Why I'm eating boring diet.
Yes. Why are you eating this way?
I believe that it's the most nutritious and the most natural diet that human beings can eat. And I have, since I was about 20, I've had some sinus issues that have gotten worse over time. And I don't seem to be able to get rid of it with diet, but I can tell you that if I'm going off the diet and I'm eating inflammatory foods, then it's definitely getting worse. So I'm trying to deal with that and finding a solution for that. And I think one of the things that I need to do for that is to have a low inflammation diet as a base. And I'm not one to get lots of inflammation if I'm eating some vegetables, but at the same time, they're not that interesting to me. Sometimes I might feel like I want to have some vegetables, but we never have any at home anyway, so I don't eat it. But my thoughts might go to, yeah, it would be nice to just have something else to kind of mix up the taste, because then it's easy for me to eat more of the good stuff, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So the reason I asked you is because a few people suggested you to talk about addiction, because I know that's something that's close to your heart. So I'm going to give you a very broad question. Could you just tell us a little bit about addiction and how you work in that field?
Yeah, so in a very broad term, the first thing I would like to say is I don't think addictions are like an illness, and that's how we view addictions. And I'm talking about all addictions. I'm not just talking about food addiction now. And I think when we think that it's an illness, we're just putting ourselves in a situation where we don't believe that we will ever be free from it. And I want to say that is completely possible to actually break that addiction and not be addicted anymore. Our brains they work in a specific way, and they will want to seek out anything that is giving you the maximum reward, because the brain thinks that that is going to help your survival. So it's not just about food. That's where things like porn comes in, because obviously we want to fornicate to make more little humans, and porn is just like lighting up your reward center a lot more, just like sugar does, compared to, let's say, a wild apple, which wouldn't have been that palatable because it's very, very low in sugar. But now we have like the cultivated apples that we have got and we've selected for because of the sugar content. So they're not even as natural as many people believe. And even an apple can light up your reward center a lot more than any natural food would do. But processed sugar is just like even worse. So every time you eat it, you have a huge release of especially dopamine. There will be other neurotransmitters as well, but I'm usually talking about dopamine because that's the main one. And when you get that big whack of dopamine in your brain, and when all of that gets released, it's saturating all your dopamine receptors in the brain. And we're not meant to have all the dopamine receptors saturated at one time. So your brain is going to perceive that as like, oh, whoa, we have too many receptors. We're just going to downregulate a bit so we don't have as many. And that's what we call tolerance when we're talking about an addiction, is that you're going to need more and more of that food that you just ate to get the same satisfaction. Because if you don't have as many receptors, you're not going to perceive it as good the second and third time that you're eating it. So our brain is going to tell us to keep eating these things because we want more satisfaction from them, but it's impossible because we don't have as many receptors. And that's how we kind of get hooked and obsessed with it, even though it doesn't even taste good anymore. So that's pretty much what addiction is. It's just a wrong use of your brain, because we are in an environment that we shouldn't be in. It's nothing wrong with any single person. When people say, well, my grandmother was addicted and my mom was addicted or whatever, it's just in my genes. Yeah, it is in your genes, and you might be a little bit more predisposed to liking carbohydrates. So other people might like heroin more, or they might like, watching Netflix more, or whatever it might be. It's not like I cannot get hooked on alcohol. It's not my thing, but other people do. So it's nothing wrong with the brain. It's just that we're using it in the wrong way, I would say.
So how do you approach a client that comes to you and says, I have this awful, we'll narrow it down now to a carbohydrate or a sugar addiction. So what's your starting point?
Well, I always start with teaching them how to do it. Excuse me. So we're doing it. There's a thing called the habit loop. I have an extra step that I've thrown into the habit loop, but if you go on like YouTube, the habit loop, you will find a lot of videos on it. Usually there is a trigger. So we start with just building awareness of what your triggers are. And that might be anything like walking into the supermarket. It could be a smell, someone says something, you watch someone eat something, whatever it might be, something that is triggering you. And what happens when you're getting triggered is that you're going to have a thought. This is not in the normal habit loop because people don't talk about it, but this is very important because you need to know what you're thinking so that you can change the way that you're thinking. So you want to catch yourself on what you're thinking, and it's not complicated. It's going to be something like, chocolate. It's that simple. That simple thought will get you to start craving. And a craving, and if I'm asking someone like, what is a craving? They're like, it's just something, I feel it and I feel the compulsion to go and eat. And I'm using craving and urge interchangeably. So if you feel like I don't have cravings, I just have urges, it's the same thing in my opinion. An urge or a craving is just a sensation in your body. So if you're actually checking in with what it feels like in your body, I'm a typical Pavlov's dog. I start to salivate straight away. It's salivation and I have tension here. And then I feel tension the whole way down to my stomach where the food would go. And it's kind of like buzzing. And that is my craving. That's how cravings feel to me. So if I can just be okay with feeling that way without reacting to it. So if I put my scientist hat on and I just observe it, pretty much I take a step back and I go outside of myself and I'm just observing what is happening to my body. There's nothing there that says that I need to go and eat that chocolate. It's just something that is happening in my body. It doesn't mean anything. It's chemical signals that are happening. That's all. So if you can learn to just accept that you're going to have cravings and that they're going to feel like that, and we don't have to react to them, then there is no reason for you to go and eat anymore. So that's what I'm teaching them first. Then we start working on changing thoughts, having goals, because if you don't have any goal, you might not be so motivated to change. It's like, oh, it doesn't matter anymore. So we need to change the whole mindset thing. So that's something that we work on down the line. But this is the first thing. This is the most important thing. This is skill that you need to master to be able to do it.
And do most people respond to that and say, yeah, that's exactly how it is for me? Do they almost immediately acknowledge that all made sense?
Yeah, probably most people, not everyone. Some people, they don't, as I said, they're not even aware of that they have thoughts. I have one client who once told me, she's like, I don't really have any cravings, but then on the way home, I just went into the bakery and I bought 2 cupcakes and ate them. And I'm like, and you didn't have a craving? No. Oh, okay, so why did you do it? I don't know. And that's just like, there is no awareness there. So we need to take, in that case, we might have to drop the whole thing, just take a step back and go and start building the awareness. So for anyone who feels like you identify with that, it's just like, be very, very patient with yourself. Let it take the time it takes, because if you don't have any awareness, you're not going to be able to do the rest of the work. But most people will actually, once they do it, they will just become very aware of like, oh, I didn't even know that that was happening. But now when I'm paying attention, yeah, I can see that that is happening. But then there's probably going to be resistance to feeling it because it doesn't feel good. We don't like sitting with feeling I don't even know why it's uncomfortable to have a bit of salivation and tension, but it just is. And that's the way the body works. It wants you to go and eat. So
Yeah, that's a phallic response, isn't it? And I think one of the things, I'll just give you a little aside about not realizing, because there may be some people listening think, well, they surely do know because I've eaten 2 cupcakes or whatever. But when it's you, when it's happening to you, and my example is nothing to do with cravings, but it's also to do with how you can be unaware of something that as soon as you have it pointed out to you, becomes obvious. When I was 48, I'm 58 now, and I was high carb and everything was going wrong with me, even though I was eating, the healthy diet, the alleged healthy diet and training. One of the things I noticed was things like reading the writing on toothpaste and on, little sort of toiletries and stuff. I couldn't really read them, and I just assumed, well, this is my older eyes. This is just what it is. This is it. And Jane went to have an operation on her eye to have a replacement lens put in, and I sat in because I'm fascinated by all that sort of stuff, and I'm very interested in what the surgeon was saying. And I said, would you just quickly check my eyes? Luckily, I met a right character, and he went, oh, yeah, come and South African chap. And he went, come and have a look. He looked in the eye and straight away went, do you know you got a cataract? No, I didn't know. But it made total sense as soon as, I was told that. So I would imagine when somebody doesn't think they have cravings, they've probably never had someone on the outside say, well, then why did you eat 2 cupcakes? What was that reason? And I thought that was brilliant, Pim. Thank you for that. It was really nice, clear explanation. And I know all these things are simple, but they're not easy because you've got to change a lifetime of habits. So do you have a sort of time frame where most people start to turn the corner, or is it incredibly variable?
Yeah, I would say it varies. So usually when I work with people one-on-one, we have 6 months, and that's enough for pretty much everyone. I have a group as well, which is 12 weeks. And so far, I'm going to be honest, like the people going through the group, they achieve their results a lot quicker than my one-on-one clients. And I think it's because they get given like a roadmap, a checklist. This is what you need to do. And they just like follow it, and they watch all the videos that are in the course portal, and they just go through everything as if like they're following the program. Whereas my one-on-one clients, they come to me and some of them are a little bit lazy. They don't do the homework properly. Like oh yeah, I forgot, or I got busy or whatever. So they only do it once a week when they're with me. So that's going to take longer. So I have also had one-on-one clients that do it in 2-3 weeks. They're like, okay, I don't have any cravings anymore. Then we have to manufacture cravings because we need to get the reps in to actually change the behavior. So that's almost a challenge in itself, that some people, they just like when they start doing it, they don't have any cravings anymore. And then we have to manufacture those so that they get the sustainable result and they can reprogram their brain long term. Otherwise, it's just another band-aid and they think it's fine, and then they're going to fall off at some point. So yeah, it can be anywhere. Like 2-3 weeks is probably the quickest I've had, but it can be several months as well.
Do you ever find?
But we're not talking years. Sorry.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, they've had it years, haven't they? I mean, that's a thing. If you learn behavior for 35 years, you're probably not going to expect, 2 weeks and it's all sorted. Although in some cases that's happened. Do you find there's any truth in the rumor that cravings can be driven by hunger and someone being malnourished?
Yeah, I do think so, absolutely. And I also think that a lot of people are probably confused between hunger and cravings, and they don't really know what the difference is. But if someone has had an eating disorder or starved themselves a lot, done a lot of, OMAD or longer fasts, and they are nutrient deficient, then I absolutely think that I can drive cravings as well, because their bodies just want food. I'm not really working with people like that, because unless they have an emotional component as well, if they go on, let's say, a carnivore diet, they are going to be the people that go on other people's channels and say, hey, carnivore cured my sugar addiction, which isn't true for those of us who are wired the way that I am, and we are eating emotionally. And I never thought I was an emotional eater, but I eat when I'm bored or when I procrastinate, and those are emotions as well. So in that case, yes, I think that can be the case.
Can I ask you a very basic question then? Why are the craving foods normally carbohydrates?
Because that's what's going to give you the most pleasure. It's what's giving you the most dopamine when you're eating it. So if you eat ice cream, or let's say cheesecake, because it has everything. It has, you know, the fat and the sugar and the dairy. It's gonna put your brain on fire. It's just gonna light up all the pleasure centers in your brain. Whereas if you eat a really nice juicy steak, maybe it gets up to a 5 out of 10. You're gonna enjoy it and you're gonna feel pleasure, but it's not gonna be like out of this world. I need to have more steak, because you're gonna feel satiated when you're eating it. Whereas the ice cream is gonna be, or the cheesecake, I'm gonna want to continue eating that forever until I feel almost sick. So that's why.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Why is there also often a stress or some sort of emotional thing that pushes people to reopen a craving? What happens there?
It's the same thing. I mean, when we experience any negative emotions, we have taught ourselves that the way that we can get rid of that is by eating. Anytime you eat, actually anything. So this applies to people who are just overeaters, even if there are people who do carnivore diet, they can't lose weight because they're overeating, because they like feeling full, because the fullness in your stomach is just dampening every other emotion. So we kind of just putting the lid on those emotions and it doesn't feel as bad. So either you just overeat or you eat the carbohydrates, which obviously gets all the happy neurochemicals in your brain going, and we feel relief temporarily until after, when that starts going away and we start blaming ourselves and thinking, why did I do that? And I'm just a piece of shit, or whatever goes on in your brain. All of those unhelpful thoughts that you're going to have as a result of doing it. And then the next day you're going to have more cravings because you've now been feeding the old habit loop, which is give into those cravings. And we just go into this cycle of treating all our negative emotions with food, and that just makes the craving stronger. And here we go. It's really hard to get it out of unless you do it very deliberately.
So would you say, sort of quite broadly then, someone isn't under stress, someone's quite happy with their life and busy, the chance of those cravings surfacing are reduced?
Yeah, I mean, in general, if you are someone who's let's say that you are on a carnivore diet. Just take an example. You're on a carnivore diet. You don't have any trouble staying on it. You haven't noticed any cravings for a while, and then someone in your family dies, or you lose a job, or something like that, and all of a sudden you notice, I have lots of cravings. What's that about? It's just the old habit loop kicking in. So absolutely. But if you have someone who's chronically depressed, it's usually coupled with some other bad habits. And very often that's food, because you can do that at home when no one's watching and just feel sorry for yourself. So, yeah.
Yeah. So use that example, because that was a brilliant answer. I have to say, I understand why everyone wanted to recommend you, because the answers have been fantastic. So what about somebody going through your program who's learned new habits and understood the triggers? Would that scenario we just had with a carnivore, or somebody losing their, a member of their family, would they, because they've gone through that course, do you think that they would be able to resist going down that rabbit hole?
Ooh, I wanna jump on your language here. So we don't resist. That's the thing. We talk about cravings as we resist the cravings, but when we resist, what we're doing is like we're using willpower, we're trying to push it away, we might try to distract ourselves, and that is just going to come back and bite you in the ass. So it's through the allowance of allowing yourself to feel those emotions that you're going to be okay, because then you don't need to eat. So if you have learned that skill, you can apply that to any emotion in your life. So if that is grief, you can just allow yourself to feel the grief and not have to go and put the lid on. Like, we can feel like shit, and we're meant to feel like shit. We don't want to, in this case, we don't even want to change how we're thinking about it, because if someone we love dies, then we want to feel sad. You don't want to be the psychopath and it's just like, oh, I can change my thoughts and I'm all happy and I don't have to eat. No, just allow yourself to feel those emotions and then come out on the other side. So it's processing cravings and allowing yourself to feel cravings is the same thing as you would actually process any other emotion. So it's the same skill and you can just use it and apply it in all of your life. So the answer to that is yes, you will be able to do that if you choose to. You can also, one thing that we do in the program, I'm just going to tell you this to scare everyone off, is that we're having you go through something I call the exception challenge. So we have you eat something that you hopefully are a little bit scared of eating, something that you're like, oh my God, if I eat that, I'm going to fall off the wagon and then I'm going to go on a binge again. But we're doing it in a very specific way with a lot of awareness. And we do this exercise because we need your brain to understand that you don't need to be scared of these foods. So it needs to calm the F down. When you can do it and you realize that you're actually able to eat something off plan and then go back on the diet that you were on the day before, you're going to feel a lot more relaxed and you're not going to be scared of going to events or watching other people eat or when they put the cupcake under your nose or whatever. You're going to be like, well, if I ever want to have that, I can have that and I will be okay. And it's the same thing. If you are in a really bad situation, you're feeling like you lost someone, you might just decide, okay, I am actually going to eat today and tomorrow I'm going to take my control back and I'm going to go back on my diet. And we don't need to make it a huge thing or have a lot of drama about it. It's just like, okay, I needed to do that because this was an emergency situation. And I'm not talking about every time you are pissed off with traffic. That is not an emergency situation. I'm talking about big life events and just the confidence to know that you are actually able to handle it and then you can do it. So you can use it to learn to be a moderator. You don't need to be an abstainer. That's what I want to say.
And I quite like being told off for my language because I think that shows how embedded that sort of language is, because actually in my coaching, I very rarely talk about willpower or any sort of negative thoughts. Actually, I'm very much into trying to think differently as well. So yes, I think that's a fantastic example. So I tend to do short, sharp interviews. So I'm really happy with what I heard. So if people wanted to get hold of you and they were worried about cravings, what's the best method to get hold of you?
The best method is probably to just go to my YouTube channel, which is under my name, Pim Johnson. And in every video description, you will find links if you want to join the Facebook group that we're doing, or if you want to join any of my programs, you will find my email there. You find everything on the YouTube. So that's probably the easiest way to just go, because they're going to watch this on YouTube. So why not?